speaker is Mr. Terry Hare-Walker, who would be discussing on the pioneer airmails of India. He's in fact a collector of airmails from India, Persia, East Africa, South Africa, and the RAF Desert Service and Imperial Airways Eastern and Africa routes. He also collects postal history and postage stamps of India. He is, of course, the member of the India Study Circle for Philately since 1968 and is an active member of the British Airmail Society, Imperial Airways Study Group, Iran Philatelic Study Circle, and Solihull Philatelic Society. He has also contributed to the Indian Airmails by Jeffrey Brown and also the contributor and proofreader for airmails across the Middle East. That's from 1918 to 1930 by Lawrence Kimpton. Mr. Terry Hare-Walker, the floor is open and we look forward to your insightful talk today.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak at this day's meeting. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody, depending on your time zone. I've been collecting and specialising in Indian airmails since 1968, when I joined the Indian Study Circle. And the main way of buying and collecting material was from the packet that was sent round to members with a lot of approvals in, and we had the opportunity to buy them. And I was fascinated by one of the items in the packet, which was an Allahabad cover of 1911, which was addressed to Austria. And at the time in 1968, this was quite expensive, at £1.10. And I decided to buy it, and I've never regretted it since. And that's what started my collection of Indian airmails. In the 1960s and early 70s, there was very little information readily available on Indian airmails. There wasn't a catalogue, and there was only lists in some of the books. I know there was one by Giles Cooper and another one by Robson Lowe. And I found that the best way to get information was by consulting a magazine called The Aerofield, which had been produced by Francis Field. And I think it started in, not sure whether it was 1924 or 1926. And he had connections all over the world. And one of his connections in India was Stephen Smith, who sent him information of all the early flights. And also he wanted to sell some of the covers that he had arranged to Francis Field. So I found that one of the best sorts of information. Everything I could find that I just collated. And eventually I built up a good storage of information. And then in I think it was early 1994, I heard that Jeffrey Brown felt that there was a need for a catalogue on Indian airmails. And so I corresponded with him, and he told me what he was doing, and he sent me a copy, or rather a first draft of his book. And basically it was a collation of everything that had been done by everybody else. And I found there were quite a lot of gaps, so I think I sent him about 35 pages of corrections and extra material. And as a result of that, he published the book on Indian airmails in 1995. I should sort of say to everybody that it should be used as a guide and not a Bible, which it does tend to be used as these days, particularly when I see quotes such as only one carried, when I know for a fact that there were two carried. The reason I know that is because I had both of these covers at some stage before letting one of them go. So as I say, it should be a guide. Auctioneers like to quote things like only one carried, because obviously they will get a better price for the item when it comes up for auction. Jeffrey then did a second edition of his book, but it was this time released on CD, and that was in 2004, which is a much better item to have, because the new version includes additional entries, new information and corrections, images of most of the covers and photographs, maps, and route details. It also contains much more, such as the name of the pilot, the crew, the aircraft name, and it's got much more information. A lot of the pictures are in colour, particularly of the covers themselves, which are from Jeffrey's collection and those of other people. So the CD version is something that I would recommend rather than the book version, unless the book version is just used as a guide. One good piece of news is that the Indian Study Circle have recently contacted Jeffrey's family, and Jeffrey's son has agreed for us to publish either both the book and the CD if we want to do both. So we are currently looking at those, and something should be released in the very near future. In the other information that's come on the market since then, which is very useful, has been the aircraft movements of Imperial Airways on the Eastern route from 1927 to 37, which was by Peter Wingent. I think anybody that collects Imperial Airways routes to the East absolutely covets this particular book, as it gives details of all the flights and any delays and accidents. And then we come to something that happened, I think it was in about 2002, and that was Peter Wingent went to his local printer where he lived, and the printer had been doing lots of airmail stuff for Peter, and he said to Peter that his family, his grandfather was a keen aerophilatelist and had been the British consul at Bandar Abbas. And there were lots of airmail covers in the attic of the family home. And was Peter interested in looking at them and giving an opinion? So this chap produced these covers and gave some details of the family. And Peter thought the best person to speak to the family and deal with this was my late friend Stan Wheatcroft. And Stan contacted the family. He was sent a lot of what was ordinary covers, except that they were less than ordinary. They were nearly all Imperial Airways covers. And then he heard that when this chap's grandfather, Alex Mungavin, was consul at Bandar Abbas, he had met most of the early flyers who stayed at Bandar Abbas overnight as a night stop, entertained them, and persuaded them to carry covers by favour on his behalf. And these covers were still in the family, and copies of them were sent to Stan, who then decided to publish a book on the Mungavin archive. And there was lots of very early covers of 1918, 1919, 1920, which had never been seen before and make quite a lot of difference to aerophilately history. If anyone can get a copy of Stan's book, I thoroughly recommend it, because it also has about 30, 40 photographs of all these early aviators and their aircraft. Stan's sister stayed with him and was a keen photographer. And she took lots of photographs of the pilots and the aircrew. And more recently, we have airmails across the Middle East by Lawrence Kimpton, which again is one I thoroughly recommend for 2 or 3 reasons. One is that Lawrence has spent a lot of time researching the information, and he's gone back to the original details. So anything that he quotes is not from something that's been published before, but something that he has personally researched. And when he quotes numbers of covers, it's things that he has traced himself. Again, it has got lots of photographs. Some of them are from the Mungaving collection, because he was lucky enough to buy the negatives of the photographs when they came up for auction. And he has recently done a second edition. The first one was 2005, and the second edition came out this year. So that's on general airmails and what is now available. Another book which most people might be interested in is on Stephen Smith, because without Stephen Smith we wouldn't have half the covers that we do have in our collection. And Gerber Singh published a book called India's Forgotten Rocket Pioneer, Stephen Smith, and that was published by the author of 243 pages. I'll just read you the review I did for the India Study Circle, which will tell you about the book and about Stephen Smith. The object of the book is to bring to life and work of Stephen Smith out of the shadows. The author has spent many years researching his subject, and in the book we follow the life and the work of Stephen Smith from his birth in Shillong in 1891 to his death in Calcutta in 1951. The book is not about philately generally, but about Smith's interest, development, and experiments with rockets. It gives details of many of his firings and describes much of his lifetime work, modifying and constructing rockets. The book includes content of letters that Smith had written over the period of 25 years to his friend Robert Paganini in Switzerland, and for the first time gives an insight to the thoughts and feelings of Smith himself. Stephen Smith became known as the father of aerophilately in India and was respected by aerophilatellists all over the world. Without his efforts, there would be no covers carried by the pioneers to collect. In the book, we learn that Stephen Smith's main interest was in rockets and aerial transport, and the profits made from selling his covers and stamps were used to finance his experiments with rockets. Smith founded the Aerophilatelic Club of India, which was based in Calcutta, and contacted collectors around the world and invited them to join the club. I think that one reason was to build up a client base in order to sell his covers. The author mentions some of the contacts that Smith met and arranged to have covers flown by them. One such occasion was when he arranged to have covers flown over Mount Everest in 1933. But the covers that he had sent to be flown were flown on survey flights, not actually over Mount Everest. But his main context of the book is about the rocket experiments. Smith made almost 300 rocket experiments throughout his life, and we learn that his interest started while still at school, when he and 4 schoolmates attempted to transport a live garden lizard over the school swimming pool using a homemade rocket. His interest in rocketry stayed with him all his life, and he believed that rockets could be used for transporting mail, food, medicines, and small animals. It is to this end that he conducted his experiments. Each of his rockets were named, and they were named after people he held in high esteem. We learn of various contemporaries of Smith around the world who were also experimenting with rockets, but most of them had some financial support. Smith's first commercial attempt was in 1934 and met with the mixed success when the rocket exploded whilst travelling. Smith was the only person in India experimenting with rockets and worked in isolation, financing his efforts himself. It was sad to read how Smith, towards the end of his life, had run out of money and could not afford to buy a postage stamp to write to his friend in Switzerland. However, his work was reorganized in 1992. His work was recognized in 1992, a year after the centenary of his birth, when the Indian government commemorated his achievements by issuing a stamp and first day cover. The book is a fine tribute to Stephen Smith and provides an insight into his life, and anyone interested in Stephen Smith and his rocket experiments and rocket mail history will find it an asset. In 1998, I entered a competition which was Indian Pioneer airmails, and I was marked down because the judges' comments were there were too many covers addressed to Stephen Smith. And yet the only covers that exist on many of the flights are those addressed to Stephen Smith. So if we didn't show them, they just wouldn't exist. I think I will now progress to today's display. Well, India became known as World Flyers Halfway House, as it has a unique distinction of being the central terminus of the world air routes. Pilots of every nationality, international fame, were attracted to fly across India at some time or another. And from 1918 onwards, many historical pioneer flights took place. This exhibit shows a selection of covers and cards flown by pioneers and famous aviators who have crossed India to get to other destinations. Stephen Smith persuaded pilots to carry many unofficial mails. Pilots would post the covers on arrival at their destinations, and without Stephen Smith, covers from many flights would not exist. This presentation shows a selection of covers in chronological order that were carried by many of the pilots who flew to, within, and from India between 1918 and 1937. It represents probably about 40% of the pioneer airmails of India that are possible to collect. The first flight to India from another country was in December 1918. The flight was by Major General Salmond and Major General Borton, Captain Ross Smith, and two mechanics. They left Heliopsis in Egypt's Cairo on the 29th of November 1918, and Karachi was reached on the 10th of December, and Delhi on the 12th of December. The aeroplane used was a Hanley Page 0400. The purpose of the flight was a survey flight to see the possibility of having an air service going towards the east. They continued the research by boat after the flight ended in December 1918. Now, the cover I'm showing is the only one today that is not in my collection. All the other covers are. And the reason I'm showing this particular cover is because A, it's an important flight, and B, it does have a connection with a cover I'm showing in one of the next few slides. It is sent by a Major Carroll, who was stationed in Bandar Abbas, and he persuaded one of the pilots to carry 3 covers for him, which this is one of the 3. And you can see that it's on field service, and in the bottom left-hand corner, it's signed, and it's from Bandar Abbas, South Persia. Major, or rather officers, were allowed to censor their own mail at this particular time. This is an original photograph in my collection that was taken immediately after the arrival in Bandar Abbas. The notation on the back of the photograph reads, "You can tell what a huge machine it is by comparing the size of the man near the wheels alongside those we saw at Murat. The next one due here from England is much bigger." On 13th of December 1918, a giant Handley Page V-1500 bomber registered J1936 and named the Old Carthusian flew from Martlesham in England to India, carrying a small mail en route. The aeroplane, the V-1500, was one of 3 that were built. This particular one was built particularly to fly to Germany and bomb Berlin. But the armistice had taken place, so it decided to use it to fly to India and to use it as part in the Third Afghan War, which was taking place at that time. There were quite a few delays en route. Just like, where are we? Yeah. The aeroplane had a wingspan of 126 feet and a height of 23 feet and an all-up weight of 30,000 pounds. It was powered by 4 Rolls-Royce Eagle 8 engines, which were mounted in tandem pairs between the wings. It was crewed by Major Archibald McLaren, who was first pilot, and Captain Robert Jock Halley, who was second pilot. There was also Flight Sergeant Smith and Sergeant Crockett, Rigger Sergeant Brown, and it was named after Charterhouse School, where both McLaren and McEwen had been pupils. After a mechanical failure during the journey, they eventually reached Cairo on the 1st of January 1919, where further repairs were carried out by the RAF at Heliopsis. And on the 8th of January, they left Cairo for Baghdad. Engine problems caused a forced landing at Abu Kemal, and then, due to oncoming darkness, they landed at Khan Baghdadi, 110 miles short of Baghdad. Baghdad was reached the following day. After more repairs on the 11th of January, they flew from Baghdad and bypassed Basra, landing at Ahwaz, where they'd arranged for 1,000 gallons of petrol to be available to refuel the aeroplane, and they reached Bandar Abbas on the 12th of January. This is an official cover, which I bought quite a few years ago, and apparently it was just found in somebody's scrapbook and then sold to a dealer. It has a 3-line cachet applied in red, and this was sent to Karachi. On the 13th of where are we? On the 13th of January, they left Bandar Abbas for Karachi, but a cylinder blew on the rear port engine, and they also had problems with the other rear engine, so they had to make a forced landing at Umara, which was 160 miles short of their destination at Karachi. It was decided to strip the aircraft of as much weight as possible to reduce the crew to 3 and attempt to fly to Karachi on 3 engines. On the morning of the 15th of January, as a result of a telegraph which had been sent to Karachi, HMS Britomart arrived off Umara. McEwen, Sergeants Brown and Crockett, and items removed from the aircraft include almost all the mail, boarded the Britomart and arrived at Karachi on the 17th of January. Halley and Smith overtook Britomart and had arrived at Karachi in the evening of the at 7:15 p.m. on the 15th of January with only 2 engines working. This is one of the covers that were carried from Baghdad. They were then put on the Britomart, and from Karachi they were sent by rail to Delhi, where they were backstamped on the 20th of January 1919, where the cachet on the rear of the cover was put. There were 28 covers recorded from Baghdad. On the at Karachi, the old Carthusian was fitted with new engines and completely overhauled. And on the 22nd of January, Captain Halley flew the aircraft to Nazirabad, where he stayed at night, and he then continued to Delhi the next day, arriving on the 23rd of January, where he was greeted by about 30,000 people on his official arrival. In May, Halley then flew the old Carthusian on a bombing raid to Afghanistan, and it is thought that this ended the Third Afghan War. This is a cover that was only discovered by me a few years ago at a local fair, and it was given to Captain Halley by Captain Carroll, or Major Carroll, who had previously sent 3 covers on the previous flight. This is one of 2 covers that Captain Halley carried, which was thought to be in his pocket, and posted on arrival. It was with him all the way, and so it's the only cover that was actually carried on the Carthusian from Bandar Abbas to Delhi, as all the other covers were sent by rail from Karachi. It was then posted in Delhi at the Kashmir Gate post office, dated the 24th of January 1919. Because it doesn't have any stamps on it, and it is on field service, and then countersigned in the bottom left-hand corner, the post office were unsure what to do with it, as they'd not seen such a cover posted in their post office. So the postmaster wasn't sure whether it could be sent free of charge and thought it might need to be paid. So stamped it with a postage due mark and made a note to the Meerut postmaster to decide if any postage needed to be paid, which is the inscription at the bottom of the cover on the back. Inside the cover was an enclosure. This is written on naval seagull form and posted from Bandar Abbas, 13th of January. And it was sent by Major Carroll to Captain Cookson. The contents read, "My dear Cookson, just a line to wish you and yours the New Year's greetings and best of luck by the first England to India aeroplane. Yours ever, H.O. Carroll." This is an attempted first flight from Europe to Australia in 1919. On the 14th of October 1919, after several delays, Paulette and Benoist took off from Paris to begin his flight to Australia. From Paris, the route was Genoa, Rome, Naples, Constantinople, Aleppo, Baghdad, Bashiya, arriving at Bandar Abbas on the 7th of November 1919. On the 11th of November, they flew to Karachi, where new engines were sent from Lahore and were fitted. They then flew to Delhi, Allahabad, Calcutta, Akiab and Rangoon. There they encountered engine trouble but managed to fly to Moulmein. There they had to abandon any further attempt due to a broken propeller and a cracked piston. These are two postcards that were issued at the time. Next, we have the England-Australia flight by Captain Ross Smith and his brother Keith Smith, with two mechanics, which were Sergeants Bennett and Shears. They were competing in a race to Australia for a fee of, I think the prize was £10,000. And they had a converted Vickers Vimy biplane. Its registration was GEAOU, and the public, when seeing this registration, they decided that it meant God help all of you, as it was such a pioneering thing at the time. This is a photograph from the Mungavin archive. This is a cover which was sent from Mungavin. He persuaded the Captain Ross Smith to carry it to Karachi for him. It has got an inscription which is per Vickers Vimy aeroplane to Australia, which is across the top. They eventually got there after a journey of 11,340 miles and 340 flying hours, and they completed this in 27 days and 21 hours. They won the Australian government's £10,000 prize for the first flight to Australia, and both pilots were knighted for their achievement. Next, we have an attempted world flight by Blake, Macmillan and Malins in 1922. On the 24th of May 1922, Major Wilfred Blake and Captain Norman Macmillan with Captain Geoffrey Malins, who was a photographer, left Croydon to attempt an around-the-world flight. 3 aeroplanes were used. The first crashed at Marseille. The second one was auctioned off at Calcutta, and the third one crashed at Lukindi Shah in the tidal forest of the Secunderabad on the 19th of August 1922. This is one of 5 recorded items from Chahbar to Karachi. Each item is unique in as much as the postage was paid in different ways. It is postmarked Chahbar, Persian Gulf, 19th of July 1922, and Karachi, the 20th of July. It is signed in the top left-hand corner by Captain Geoffrey Malins. On the left-hand side of the slide, we have Major Blake arriving at Karachi with various people who have come to greet him. This is Captain Macmillan, top left-hand corner, and Captain Malins next to him. We have a photograph which was taken after landing at Baghdad on the afternoon of the 13th of July 1922. We have another photograph which it says on the back, Major Blake's machine 15 minutes after alighting at Allahabad during his tour around the world on August the 13th, 1922. And then the bottom photograph is Major Blake with his plane under repair at Agra. We have a world flight by Squadron Leader McLaren, March to August 1924. Squadron Leader McLaren, Flying Officer Plenderleaf, Mechanic Flight Sergeant Andrews, left RAF Calshot on the 25th of March 1924 in their Vickers Vulture amphibian GEBHO in an attempt to fly around the world. The venture ended in failure after 2 engine changes, many mechanical problems, illness of Andrews, and even a replacement aeroplane. The second plane was wrecked in a forced landing near the Aleutian Islands on the 2nd of August 1924, thus ending their attempt at a world flight. There are only 2 covers known from this flight. In one of the covers, which was in Geoffrey Brown's collection, it says, "Dear Mr. Squire, I'm returning 2 envelopes addressed to you. I hope you will understand, but I have thousands of the same, or rather had. All the others have been lost. In a show like this, we have so much to carry and to think about. It is impossible to take care of such things. I couldn't cross the Atlantic with mail. No mail means more petrol. Many thanks for good wishes. We're stuck in the middle of the Sind Desert, waiting for a new engine. We push off on the 11th. Kindest regards, yours, J. Plenderleaf." Now, in Geoffrey Brown's book, looking at his cover, he had difficulty reading the postmark on it. And he says that the postmark reads Jubin, but I don't think there is such a place. And on my cover, which is under a magnifying glass, which is much easier to read, the postmark is a TPO cancellation, which is J18 in set number 2, the 7th of May. This is Squadron Leader McLaren and Flying Officer Plenderleaf, and seated is Flying Sergeant Andrews when they prepare their Vickers Vulture for their round-the-world venture. And on the right-hand side, we have the aeroplane pictured at Abusir in Egypt. Next, we have a Dutch proving flight, which is Amsterdam to Batavia in 1924. This is the first cover I have that is actually associated with Stephen Smith, which is one that is signed on the back. I think it's the first time it has started to arrange for covers to be carried. On the 1st of October 1924, the KLM Fokker F7 registration HNACC took off from Amsterdam on the first leg of a 9,552-mile trip to Batavia, Java. The pilots were Captain Thomason and Thirdsink van der Hoop and Lieutenant van der Weyden. Following the unfortunate emergency landing in Bulgaria on the 3rd of October 1924, the flight was delayed by 29 days for the installation of a new engine and repairs to the landing gear. It resumed on the 2nd of November 1924. Overnight stops were made at Ankara, Aleppo, Baghdad, Bushehr, Bandar Abbas, Karachi, Ambala, Allahabad, Calcutta, Akiab, Rangoon, Singora and Medan. With the permission of the Dutch Consul General in Calcutta, a small unofficial mail was carried in India from Calcutta and to Akiab in Burma. A total of 25 letters were carried. In the bottom left-hand corner, they're signed by Mr. Fernandez, who was a member of the Aerophilatelic Club of Calcutta. Next, we have the Italian World air flight by seaplane, April to November 1925. This was by the Colonel Marchese Francesco Di Pinedo of the Italian Royal Air Force and his mechanic Ernesto Campanelli. They left northern Italy in April 1925 in a seaplane, a Savoia S-16. And the route was from northern Italy to Rome, the Persian Gulf, Karachi, Calcutta, Rangoon, Brunei, Melbourne, Indonesia, Philippines, Tokyo, Bangkok, and Italy. He agreed to carry some mail on behalf of Stephen Smith, but wanted a fee for his autograph on the covers. Stephen Smith refused to pay a fee for the autograph, and so Di Pinedo cut the covers in half and kept the portion with his autograph on and just carried the one half of the covers. What we have here is one of the covers that were carried from Calcutta to Australia. On the back of the cover is a cachet showing the route. It's got Italian World flight. Next, we have the Danish flight, 1926, Copenhagen to Tokyo. On the 16th of March 1926, an attempt was made by pilots Botved and Herschend to fly from Copenhagen to Tokyo in two Danish-built Fokker aeroplanes. The two airmen arrived at Karachi on the 28th of March and flew to Calcutta via Agra. From Calcutta, Lieutenant Botved and his mechanic left for Rangoon and Bangkok. The flight continued to Ning'ai in China, where here, whilst flying over the desert, the aeroplane was made to make a landing, and Chinese bandits relieved the airmen of all their belongings and burnt the aeroplane. And they were only permitted to retain the covers that they had on them, which were for Tokyo. From India, they carried mail to three destinations, to Rangoon, to Bangkok, and to Tokyo. Obviously, the mail for Tokyo were quite lucky to have and was not burnt by the bandits. We have a Spanish flight, Madrid to Manila in 1926. 3 Spanish-built Breguet 12 biplanes left Madrid on a flight to Manila. All the aeroplanes arrived at Cairo, but only 2 reached Baghdad safely. The third machine pilot, by Captain Esteves, took a different route and made an emergency landing in the Arabian desert. Mail was carried from India to 3 different destinations. We have mail carried from Karachi to Calcutta, which was 26 letters. That's in the top left-hand corner. Calcutta to Rangoon in the bottom left-hand corner, and Calcutta to Manila, which was on the right-hand side. All the mail was autographed by Captain Laringa. Mail reached Manila on the 13th of May 1926. Next we have a flight from Croydon to Karachi and then back to Croydon in 1928. On the 10th of June 1928, the Duchess of Bedford attempted a record flight from Croydon to Karachi and back. The aeroplane was the Princess Xenia, which was a Fokker Jupiter monoplane and was piloted by Captain Barnard, an ex-RAF pilot. At Bashaya, the aircraft's engine failed, resulted in a delay of 11 weeks as the replacement engine had to be sent from England to Karachi. Karachi was finally reached on the 22nd of August 1928. The Princess Xenia had been hired, and in 1929 the Duchess purchased the aeroplane and renamed it the Spider. It was re-engined, fitted with a 4-blade propeller and an extra fuel tank. The Duchess carried on the flight a quantity of cigarettes, which were 3 Castle cigarettes, which she obviously decided to swap or barter and carry back a quantity of Indian tea. One of the 15 items of mail carried on the return flight is shown above, which is a card. The flight arrived at Croydon on the 6th of September. We've got the German flight from Cologne to Tokyo, 1927-28. On the 20th of September 1927, a Casper biplane named the Germania left Cologne with Tokyo as the objective. The crew of the machine consisted of Count Solms, Captain Koenig, and Johannes Hermann. The plane reached Karachi on the 31st of October and crossed India via Etawah and Calcutta. The aeroplane crashed 4 times during the journey, and after missing the aerodrome at Calcutta and landing 12 miles away, it was decided to abandon the flight. The only mail carried was 24 covers from Etawah to Calcutta. 20 of the covers have a salmon-coloured label, which is shown on the bottom right-hand cover, and 4 of the covers are without labels, which are top right-hand cover. All the covers are autographed by the pilot and the engineer. Got Paris to Saigon and back to Paris, 1927. Captain Leon Charles piloting a PT-25 aircraft named Roger Latapi flew from France to Saigon via India in October 1927. The journey to India took 5 days, and Karachi was reached on the 16th of October 1927. Mail carried was Allahabad to Calcutta 4, Calcutta to Allahabad 19, Calcutta Karachi 55, and Calcutta to Paris 26. Calcutta to Paris for English destinations was 67. All the mail was stamped in Calcutta and stamped with a circular seal of the French consul in violet ink. In the bottom right-hand side of the slide was a note from Stephen Smith, which is to Mr. Holman, Esquire. Greetings by Captain Leon Charles. Sincerely yours, Stephen Smith, with one of his cachets. Next, we have a flight which is termed by a lot of people as the longest flight. It is England to Australia by Miller and Lancaster, 1927 to 28. Captain Lancaster wanted to fly to Australia, but hadn't got the finance to do it. And at a ball, he met Mrs. Keith Miller, who was there, who was from Australia and just happened to be in England at the time. I think she fell in love with Captain Lancaster, and she said to him that she would finance his trip to Australia if he took her with him. As this was the only way he was going to make the journey, he agreed to this. And they purchased a plane, which was called which was an Avro Avian, named the Red Rose. There were many sort of delays on the route. It took them 4 months to complete the journey. They reached Calcutta on the 19th of December, where they collected a small mail for Akiab, Rangoon, Singapore, and Australia. Port Darwin was eventually reached on the 19th of March in 1928. Shown is one of the 32 covers from Calcutta to Akiab. Now, when they flew from Akiab to Rangoon, there was a snake that crawled into the cockpit where Mrs. Miller was. And when people heard about this, they decided to use some artistic license to illustrate what had happened. And Mrs. Miller apparently didn't panic, but she unscrewed the joystick and battered the snake to death. And this is the illustration that was used at the time. And then we also have one of the covers, which was for Rangoon. Although 52 were actually flown for Rangoon from Calcutta, only 26 were safely delivered. The first solo flight from England to Australia in 1928 was from Croydon to Bundaberg. Bert Hinkler left Croydon on the 7th of February 1928 and reached Calcutta on the 16th of February. He was persuaded to carry postcards provided by the Aero Philatelic Club of Calcutta. He landed his Avro Avian at Darwin, Australia on the 22nd of February. He became the first pilot to fly solo from England to Australia. The time taken was 15 and a half days. Whilst flying, whilst carrying out this flight, he had passed Lancaster and Miller en route. Mail carried was 50 postcards from Calcutta to Rangoon, and 6 postcards from Karachi to Bundaberg. The photograph on the left shows Bert Hinkler greeted on his arrival in Australia. Next, we have the German flight Berlin to Tokyo in 1928. This was Baron van Hohenfeld and Captain Lindner. They flew from Berlin in a Junkers all-metal monoplane named the Europa and landed at Calcutta on the 27th of September 1928. Mail carried from Calcutta to Bangkok was 46 postcards, and Calcutta to Tokyo 47 postcards. A cachet was applied on arrival. The airplane did not land at Bangkok, and mail was carried on to Tokyo. The aeroplane was then presented to the Japanese aviation authorities. Next, we have a German world flight, 1928-29, by the boy pilot Baron von Koenig, who left Berlin in August 1928 on a world flight. Flying the Camarade, which was a Clem Daimler baby plane, it flew across India from Karachi to Calcutta, carrying a mail of 4 postcards for Jodhpur and 15 postcards for Calcutta. That's one of the postcards for Calcutta, one of 15. On the reverse of the postcard, it reads, carried by Baron von Koenig, Warthausen, captain, pilot and mechanic of the Camarade D-1433, the first 20 HP baby plane which flew from Europe to Asia, Berlin, Moscow, Tehran, Karachi, in 16 flying days, which is 82 flying hours. The Baron flew across India via Karachi, Utalai, Jodhpur, Nazirabad, Agra, Allahabad, and Gaya to Calcutta, where he arrived on the 24th of December 1928. The journey of approximately 8,500 kilometers was accompanied in 82 flying hours. These are some of the postcards that were carried by him. On the left, we have one of 39 carried to Akiab, and below that, we have one of 57 carried to Rangoon. And then on the right-hand side, we have one of 26 carried from Calcutta to Bangkok. It arrived in Bangkok on the 14th of February, and then flew back in India on the 1st of March. There was a world tour via the Viscount to Viscountess de Cebu, 1928-29. This was basically a holiday for them. During their world tour in 1928-29, the Viscount de Cebu, accompanied by his wife, flew on the 3rd of January 1929 from Baghdad to Karachi, the De Havilland DH-60 Moth. There was a considerable delay in the flight at Tehran caused by the illness of the Viscount. Karachi was reached on the 5th of February 1929. This was one of 50 covers carried from Baghdad to Karachi. A special cachet was used, cancelling the stamps, and this was officially arranged by the Postal Department. We have England, Japan, United States of America, 1930. After purchasing a Fokker V7B 3M, registered in the United Kingdom and named the Maryland Free State, Mr. Van Leer Black, together with crew of Captain Gaysdorfer, Schlotz and Weber, left Croydon on the 3rd of March 1930, attempting a flight to the United States in an easterly direction. The route was Croydon, Marseille, Suvela, Tangier, Gircircus, Tunis, Tripoli, Cairo, Jas, Baghdad, Karachi, Calcutta, Akiab, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and to Alameda, California, via Francisco. Alameda was reached on the 9th of May 1930. And letters for San Francisco bear the Alameda postmark for the 12th of May 1930. Mail carried from India was Calcutta to Saigon, 23 covers, Calcutta, Alameda, 26 covers, and Calcutta, New York, 11 covers. Tokyo was reached on the 9th of April via Saigon. The aircraft was then dismantled and shipped to San Francisco. Mr. Van Leer Black was killed a few months later when he fell off his yacht while cruising off the coast of New Jersey. Shown is one of the 26 letters carried for San Francisco. England to Australia, 1930. On the 17th of October 1930, Mr. Oscar Garden took off from Lymph Aerodrome in a DH-60M Moth named the Kia-Ora, which is Maori for good luck. He was bound for Sydney and possibly New Zealand, his homeland. He reached Calcutta on the 30th of October 1930, where he collected a small mail of 11 covers, which he flew to Rangoon. They were then posted back to Calcutta under their own cover by surface mail. Oscar Garden touched down in Australia soil at Wyndham, some miles from Darwin, on the 4th of November 1930. This is one of 11 covers that were carried from Calcutta to Rangoon. The back stamp reads Rangoon, 31st of October 1930. The box cachet was applied and all the covers are signed by the pilot. The photograph shows Oscar Garden on his arrival in Australia. Next, we have a cover from Paris to Saigon, 1930. This was by the French pilot Maurice Ilse, set off from France. She had gained fame as a long-distance pilot of exceptional skill. At the time this flight took place, she was credited with 112 parachute descents. And this is a cover that was carried from Calcutta to Rangoon, which is one of 39 letters. Maurice Ilse then did another flight across India, which was France to Japan in 1933. In April 1933, she flew in a farmer monoplane from Japan to Paris. On the 5th of April, she left Calcutta with a mail of 90 letters for Rangoon. But as she did not land there, it was taken on to a next stop at Hanoi. The covers were then brought back by an airline of the French Air Orient service and consequently bear a cachet in black in 3 lines on the rear of the covers. This is a world flight by Mrs. Victor Bruce, 1930. Mrs. Victor Bruce, who uses her husband's name. Her name was Mildred. She was a well-known racing driver, and she had actually taken place in the Monte Carlo rally. Her husband, who she married in 1927, had proposed to her some time earlier, and she said to him that if he wins the Monte Carlo rally, she will marry him. Well, he won the Monte Carlo rally, so she married him. The following year, she entered the Monte Carlo rally, and she finished 6th overall, and was placed as first amongst the female drivers. So she did quite well. She decided to get involved in aviation, and she was shopping in London one day, and she saw an aeroplane in the window of one of the big department stores. I think it might have been Selfridges, and it had a placard on it saying that this aeroplane can fly anywhere all around the world. And so she decided that it would be a good idea to buy it and fly around the world. So she bought the aeroplane, and then after only 40 hours of solo flying, she bought the Blackburn Bluebird and set off from Heston Aerodrome on the 25th of September 1930 in an attempt to fly around the world. Her journey was eventful. She was forced down in the Syrian desert after running out of petrol. At the mouth of the Persian Gulf, she landed in quicksand and had to be rescued. She arrived at Karachi on the 24th of October, where she picked up about 150 letters to be distributed between Jodhpur, Allahabad, Calcutta, Akiab and Rangoon. This is a cover carried from Karachi to Akiab on the 29th of October. The plane was unable to land at Akiab, and the mail was overcarried to East Rangoon, which is shown in the cancellation on the stamp. These are two other covers carried by her. She flew to Rangoon and then on to Shanghai and across the Yellow Sea to Seoul, Korea. She crossed from Tokyo to Vancouver by sea and then flew to New York. The machine had to be repaired after 2 crashes on the Trans-American flight and finally brought back to Europe by sea. She successfully completed her world trip and flew from Le Havre to Croydon on the 20th February 1931. Her mother was American, and whilst flying across America, she passed the town where her mother was born, and she dropped a spark plug with a Union Jack on it. These are two of the covers that she carried. What have we got there? Karachi, Allahabad and Karachi, Rangoon. 2 more covers, Karachi, Jodhpur and Karachi, Calcutta. And arriving back in England, she was received by fellow women air aces. On the left, we have Amy Johnson, and on her right, we have Winifred Spooner, who were 2 similar, very well-known aviatrix. Got Calcutta to Cape Town, 1930. This is by Abdul M. Murad, who set off from Calcutta to Karachi in a Gypsy Moth Sunita on the 23rd of December 1930. He intended to compete for the £500 prize offered by His Highness the Aga Khan for the first Indian to make a solo flight from Karachi to Cape Town. Mail carried was Dum Dum to Gaya 27, Dum Dum Allahabad 6, Dum Dum Delhi 32, Dum Dum Karachi 16 and Dum Dum Shahbar 6. The flight was abandoned when the plane crashed at Shahbar near Basra in old World War I trenches. This is a selection of 3 of the covers going to Gaya, Delhi and Karachi. We have American World Flight, March, April 1931, by Hadley and Pratt on their round the world flight. They picked up a small mail of 18 letters from Karachi and flew to Calcutta en route for Singapore in a Steerland biplane NR 8809. One of 18 covers flown from Karachi to Calcutta, autographed by both pilots. It arrived in Calcutta on the 26th of March 1931 and has a 4-line cachet The Steelan left Calcutta on the 1st of April 1931. The flight was held up in Calcutta until the 1st of April. On the left, we have one of 35 covers carried from Calcutta to Akiab, signed by John Pratt. And on the right, we have one of 45 carried from Calcutta to Rangoon, signed by John Pratt and Ross Adley. Cachets were put on the covers by Stephen Smith. World flight by Mr. and Mrs. Day, 1931. Mr. and Mrs. Day, an American couple, left Heston Airdrome on the 30th of May 31 on a holiday tour around the world. The machine used was an NR 2007 biplane, which was specially designed for the trip by Mr. Day. They arrived in Calcutta on the 10th of April 31, but then, owing to illness of Mr. Day, the flight was held up until the 3rd of September. On the right, on the left, we have a photograph of Gladys and Charles Day in their aeroplane. And then on the right, we have one of 28 covers that were carried from Calcutta to Akiab on the 3rd of September. So it's postmarked on the 10th of August, but then because of the delay of Mr. Day's illness, it was delayed. After leaving Akiab, Mr. and Mrs. Day made a forced landing in the jungle near Sandaway due to engine seizure, and the plane was slightly damaged. A cover on the right is from Calcutta to Rangoon. Mail carried was Karachi to Calcutta 6, Calcutta Akiab 28, and Calcutta Rangoon 14. England to Australia, April 31, by Fairbairn and Shenstone, flying Spartan Arrow. This was an attempt to break the speed record for the England-Australia flight. They were plagued by delays, and they ended up taking 57 days. The flight record at that time was under 10 days, which was held by Charles W.A. Scott. They carried mail on their England-Australia flight. Mail was picked up at Calcutta and distributed as follows: Singapore 20 covers, Port Darwin 43, and Sydney 4. Shown is one of the 43 covers carried from Calcutta to Port Darwin. American World Flight 3132. The American flyers Halliburton and Stevens flew around the world in a Steelan biplane named the Flying Carpet, landing in Calcutta on the 3rd of January 32, carrying one card from Timbuktu. Whilst in Calcutta, they made a flight to within 20 miles of Mount Everest. Special permission for the flight was received from the King of Nepal, and 50 letters were carried on the flight, and special cachet was used, and the covers were all prepared by Stephen Smith. We have the American World Flight, March 1932. In March 1932, Mr. Smith Reynolds, an American flyer, took off on a world flight at Savoia Marcinetti. The route was London, Cairo, Calcutta, Hong Kong, San Francisco, New York. Mail was distributed as follows: Cairo to Calcutta 1, Calcutta to Rangoon 8, Calcutta to Mayon Siam 1, and Calcutta to Hong Kong 1. This is one of the 8 covers that were carried from Calcutta to Rangoon. The back stamp reads Park Street, Calcutta, 28th of March 1932. Mr. Smith Reynolds was the son of a multi-millionaire and was quite young when he took this flight. A few months after arriving back in America, he was at a party and he was found with a gunshot. He was killed by a gunshot to his head, and he was only aged 20 at the time. Although 2 people were arrested with what was thought to be a murder, the evidence wasn't very good, and they were both let off. They weren't charged, and so it was never actually decided what really happened. German workflight 1932. On a work flight from Cologne, Captain Hans Bertram and his mechanic Adolf Klausmann in a Junker seaplane Atlantis landed at Calcutta in April 1932. The plane departed from Calcutta on the 14th of April, carrying 75 covers for Rangoon. From Rangoon, the Atlantis flew via Bangkok and Singapore to Batavia, which was reached on the 6th of May. On the 14th of May, it departed for Darwin when it was blown off course. On the 15th of May, they were forced to land in a remote area of northern Australia. The stranded men spent almost 6 weeks severely deprived of food and water and were close to death when they were rescued by a group of local Aboriginal fishermen on the 22nd of June. After repairs, the plane left Darwin on the 12th of December. There was a book written on this flight called The Flight into Hell. And just after buying this cover, I bought the book, and I was flying to Australia, and I decided to read the book on the flight when the stewardess came over to me and asked me if I could put the book away or cover the outside of the book, as it might distress some of the passengers. Next, we have Australia to England by Jim Weir, 1932. He decided to attempt to fly from Australia to England in a De Havilland DH-60X Moth called Edith. He left Port Darwin on the 6th of June and encountered various delays en route. He landed at Calcutta on the 1st of July and then flew to Karachi. On the 3rd of July, due to illness, he then decided to abandon his attempt. Only 2 covers were carried on the flight from Darwin to Calcutta and are postmarked the 6th of June. So they were carried on the 6th of June. Stamps cancelled on arrival, 1st of July 1932, Calcutta, and that's signed by the pilot Jim Weir. England, Australia, 1932, by the French Canadian pilot Jacques Herbert. In an attempt to fly around the world, he left Heston on the 12th of October 1932 and arrived at Darwin on the 6th of December. The flight took 7 weeks and 6 days. The only mail carried from India were 57 covers carried from Calcutta to Akiab. The plane crashed at Cloncurry on the 10th of December, but Herbert escaped unhurt. Herbert was the first Canadian to fly from England to Australia. Shown is one of the 57 covers carried from Calcutta to Akiab. Each cover is pilot signed and has a vignette in orange. Australia to South Africa 1932 by Captain James Dixon and Arthur Lowe. They flew in Lockheed Orion, the Spirit of Fun, from Sydney on the 15th of October 1932, heading for Shanghai. From Shanghai, it flew via Hong Kong and Hanoi to Calcutta and then Bombay. It then flew to Baghdad, Khartoum, arriving at Johannesburg on the 15th of November. A small mail was flown in India, of which this is one of 15, from Calcutta to Bombay. He also carried 6 letters from Bombay to Karachi. All the covers are autographed by the pilot on the reverse. After reaching Africa, the plane crashed 2 days after arrival, and Captain Dixon was killed. Australia, England, July 33. Mr. James Wood took off from Perth in a DH-60M Moth, the Spirit of Western Australia, bound for England. He made a forced landing in Onslow due to engine trouble, arriving at Broome on the 5th of July. He reached Calcutta on the 20th of July 33, where he collected a small mail of 16 covers, which he flew to Lucknow. They were all then posted back to Calcutta by surface mail. At Bandar Abbas, his undercarriage collapsed on landing, further delaying the flight. He eventually arrived in England on the 17th of August. This is one of the 16 covers that were carried. Penang to Bombay by Prince Ali Khan, 1933. Prince Ali Khan, son of the Aga Khan, flew with Major Vetch, who was the chief instructor of the Bombay Flying Club, and they flew from Bombay to Singapore and returned in a Pusmuth VT ABG. On the return journey, they reached Dum Dum, Calcutta on the 16th of January. From Dum Dum, 91 covers were carried to Santa Cruz, Bombay. A special blue label was used, printed in blue and red in 4 lines. The label is tied on the cover by a pink cachet, showing an eagle in flight. Below, a small aeroplane on either side. There's written in Urdu and Hindi the words signifying sky carriage. Australia, England, Australia, flight 1933. With the intention of creating a record round-the-world flight, the Faith in Australia, piloted by Charles Orme, G.U. Allen and Gordon Taylor, left Sydney on the 21st of June 1933. Due to a number of problems, they did not reach England until the 10th of July 1933. They intended to fly on to the USA, but the flight was abandoned as a result of an accident at the Port Marnock beach in Dublin, Ireland. This is a cover that was flown from Australia to England via Rangoon and Calcutta, and has special stamp from Calcutta and Rangoon on it. It was then flown from Karachi to Jask, where cachets were applied. This is one of the few covers were then carried back on the return flight from England to Australia in October 1933. The cover is signed by Orme, and it also has on it the dates of the flight and where it was flown from. We've got Australia, England, and England, Australia. The return flight, they reached Australia in a time of 6 days, 17 hours, 56 minutes, beating the record recently set by Kingsford Smith. The Houston Mount Everest Expedition 1933. The expedition was mounted to fly over the summit of Mount Everest. The enterprise was sponsored by Lady Houston, who donated £15,000 in total. 2 attempts were made, sanctioned by the King of Nepal. The 2 flights over the summit by squadron leader Lord Clydesdale and flight Lieutenant McIntyre on the 3rd of April, 19th April, were both successful. There were also 2 survey flights on the 8th of April and the 20th of April by Air Commodore Fellows. On the left, we have one of 25 covers who were actually flown on the first attempt over the summit. Covers are generally postmarked the 3rd, 4th or 5th of April, and each member of the party was allowed to send 1 envelope. And on the right hand, we have one of 87 covers, which Stephen Smith arranged to have flown. A fee was charged of 1 guinea for each cover. The money was going to RAF charities. These were flown on a survey flight and not over Mount Everest. England, Australia, 1935. Harry Broadbent set off from Darwin on the 10th of October 1935 in a DABS 3 VHUQO. After leaving Basra, he had to make a forced landing in the desert near Shaba in Turkey. He sold the damaged aeroplane and flew to Croydon by Imperial Airways. He then managed to get a Percival Gull, VHUVA, and Harry Broadbent left Croydon on the 2nd of November 1935 and successfully reached Darwin on the 9th of November, thus setting a new record of 6 days, 21 hours, 19 minutes. This was 7 hours faster than Kingsford Smith's flight 2 years earlier. The aircraft was being ferried for Sir Gordon Taylor. 18 covers were carried from Australia to England, and this is one of the few covers were then also carried on the return journey, which is shown by the postmarks. Brisbane to Cape Town by Mrs. Bonney, 1937. Mrs. Bonney, in a Clem monoplane, My Little Ship 2, flew from Brisbane on the first direct flight from Australia through Asia and Africa to Cape Town. The flight took 4 months. Mrs. Bonney, her husband wasn't keen on driving a car or flying, but he played a lot of golf. And one of his cousins was a well-known aviator, and he taught Mrs. Bonney to fly. And while he was playing golf, she took flying lessons. And when he heard how good she was at flying, he bought her an aeroplane. And so in 1937, she decided to fly to South Africa. During the flight, covers were carried at various stops en route. There are 32 covers in a complete set if you have all the various stops where she carried covers from. This is one of the few covers that were posted on Coronation Day at New Delhi on the 12th of May, 1937. And lastly, we have a cover, which is the Japanese coronation flight, Tokyo to Croydon and return, 1937. Now, this is not one of the most important of the Pioneer flights, but the reason I'm showing this is because a lot of prominent aeroflottists have got confused by this. It is a rocketgram that Stephen Smith used and used as a postcard to be carried on the flight. Both Geoffrey Brown, when he came to see a display I was given in 2001, said that he thought it was a rocketgram and didn't realise it had been carried by an aeroplane. And also Gerber Singh, in his book on Stephen Smith, illustrates this particular item. And again, he illustrates it as a rocketgram and not as an aerophilatelic cover that's flown. This was a goodwill flight from Tokyo to London and was organised by Japan's most prominent newspaper to bring Japanese congratulations to the British nation for the coronation of King George VI. The pilot, with his mechanic, flew from Tokyo to London in 94.5 hours. They left Tokyo on the 5th of April and landed at Croydon on the 9th. The machine was a Mitsubishi kamikaze monoplane named the Divine Wind. It had a Japanese engine giving 550 horsepower, having an official maximum speed of 310 miles per hour with a range of just under 1,500 miles. This was one of 54 coronation loyalty cards that were carried from Calcutta to Rangoon on the 19th of May and then posted back to Calcutta. These covers were then handed to the pilot by the Consul General for Japan in Calcutta and bear the Japanese consul official stamp in Calcutta. And that ends my display of slides. I've obviously used quite a lot of books, but the ones I've used most are AMLs Across the Middle East by Lawrence Kimpton, the Australian AML Catalogue by Eustace and Fromer, The Flight of the Old Carthusian by Ed Wolfe, Indian Airmails Revised Edition by Geoffrey Brown, and Indian Airmails by Molyneux, which was supposed to be published just after 1950, but because of shortage of paper after the war, never got published. And that's the end of my display.
So many thanks, Mr. Terry Hare-Walker. It was absolutely a detailed and such an insightful presentation. We are absolutely grateful to you for that.
Like, it's a pleasure.